part, we'll be proceeding with our panel discussion, and we would like to request all of the speakers to please join us here in front. We have Mr. Renato T. Famintuan, CEO of Bayside Terminal and Transportation Services, Ms. Tina A. Pascual, Director and Head of Quality and Safety, Jollibee Worldwide Services Logistics, Mr. and others maintain that each of these layers does have a role to play and cannot therefore be eliminated. What is your take on the subject?
Okay. I didn't mention during my speech that one of my advocacy, since 2017, I gathered farmers and motivated them to continue farming. And what we were doing since the time until now, we provided them list of commodities to plant, and we buy it all and distribute it to the market. With the excess commodities, we created a market for them. So through this concept, we were able to eliminate, the layers of traders. And another thing, we're sending our reefer van to the farms. It's our reefer van who pick up all the produce of these farmers to eliminate problems in transporting and for us to be ensured that if the vegetables or any crops they produce are freshly harvested and we can bring it down to our warehouse as early as possible. So we ensured freshness, and at the same time we can avoid easy deterioration because by bringing it early on to the supermarket, it will prolong the shelf life. In fact, presently we are looking now on the post-harvest facility from Israel because this will practically extend the shelf life of commodities for fresh produce. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
That's fine. So you want to answer?
Yes, minimalizing the number of traders in between will definitely bring down the cost of the commodities. Adversely, if you add more and more, then the price of the commodity goes up. But I mentioned that earlier. I said we are operating on an open system. There is no real system that is working in the trading of commodities. So anybody can just come in, anybody can just do it, and then it creates multiple layers, and so on and so forth. So the answer to that really is by creating the regional food terminals. When the farmers can do the trading themselves, and then delivery can be contracted on a reasonable level, then only the farmers will profit from the system. Right now, it's creating so many levels of entrepreneurs simply because there is no system and anybody can just do it. So unless we really see the light in the creation of food terminals, we will continue to have this very high cost of produce. And inflation is kicking up so high. Do you know that the biggest, now they call it food inflation. It's no longer just an inflation. The biggest cost of our food is the one that is creating the highest inflation level ever in the Philippines. So that's very sad.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anything else to add? Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Mon, and of course, for Committee 1. Next question po, for USAID. What can USAID and CCAP do together to fast-track the objectives of Urban Connect? Is there developmental assistance available for USAID?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And again, as I mentioned, so we signed an MOU with CCAP 5 years ago. Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier, the way USAID works really, before we really had a lot of, and when the Philippines was still when we were still a lower income economy before, and USAID had more funds, we really paid for things. We built infrastructure for the Philippines. For example, if you go to Mindanao, we built the Jensen Airport. But nowadays, the Philippines is more liquid, there's more development now, and USAID in the Philippines has less funds. Most of what we do is technical assistance in the form of, let's say, capacity building support, training, workshops, and then organizing, and then brokering. So what we can do here, for example, for Urban Connect, as I mentioned, is we're working with 9 cities. We can broker and facilitate supply and demand, basically. We basically work with all the different stakeholders. We know and we're well plugged in terms of what are the gaps in terms of investments. For example, cold chain or whatnot, and power, for example, digital. So in each of the cities that we work in, we do some sort of a diagnostics, we know what the gaps are, and then we try to find both government and private sector solutions. So for example, in the cities that we work with, agribusiness value chains are an important source of livelihood for people. So maybe if we can work together and identify investments, additional investments through, let's say, some economic zones, some fiscal incentives that the LGUs can do. So what we offer really is more of the technical advisory support and brokering both the public and private sector so that the supply and demand gaps are at least connected, or the gaps are filled in a sense. So that's what we try to do.
Thank you. And another question for Ms. Pascual. We have recently learned about the project of Scholars of Sustenance Philippines to address the problem to hunger and minimize wastage of edible food. Is Jollibee involved in this program as part of their CSR?
Yes. We launched a Project Angel eliminating all this specific to Quality and Safety Department. I launched last year. We call it Project Angel with #HeavenSent. These are items coming from samples that we tested in the laboratory, coming from our suppliers. We cannot really deliver your product without passing compliance testing. So there is this specification approved by us, by R&D, by purchasing, by quality. We need to verify that product compliance consistency. All the rest, we draw samples. For instance, for tons of products, we draw using the military standard table. We do the destructive testing. After that, without the sustainability and ever, we throw it sa basurahan. Then we created a program na pwedeng gamitin yung mga gold standards, because these are gold standards, these are premium standards, fresh produce from suppliers. So ipinakakain namin siya sa third party and kami mismo pinakain namin siya. Then for example, our rice suppliers, we donated its church, and we have this Brigada Eskwela also. We do a lot of feeding sa mga eskwelahan. That is speaking of that unit alone. Meron pang JFC Foundation na tinatawag, doing a lot of sustainability measures. So essentially, we reduce around 83%, from our previous tapon. We reduce 83% of that. And 83% goes to Project Angel with #HeavenSent as as my authorship. Because ako man mismo, syempre as a mom, nangihinayang ako magtapon. And of course, all of the regulations, there is these new regulations for all the organizations with SEC registration, you are mandated to do that. So one aspect of that is to eliminate the zero waste, zero food loss. Yung mga available products nyo, you can have that. Pero kailangan, there shall be a balancing act. Why? Because temptation din yan eh. So, you need to create a very, very strict system in such a way na hindi siya magiging temptation from the empleyado to security guard. Something like a balancing act, providing both benefit. So, ganun ang ginagawa natin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And of course, another question for USAID, and of course, the rest may also answer. The projects that were presented are quite laudable, timely, and necessary. However, may we just clarify if the studies undertaken by USAID are in sync with the parallel studies that we assume have also been done in the government. We just need to be reassured that no duplication of effort would ultimately lead to government competing with the private sector. For instance, we learned that last week that a GOCC intends to set up a regional food terminal for vegetables in Camarines Sur. Would USAID or any other agency be aware of the rationale behind this project?
Thanks for that question. That's very important. I want to emphasize that we don't do anything without being requested by government, whether that's national or local government. Everything we try to do is really demand-driven. So for example, and by the way, for example, the Clark Food Hub, that wasn't our idea. It was, we were approached by, the reason why we got pulled into that was we have a very close working relationship with DTI. Earlier this year, they approached us. And they said, oh, you needed support for this food hub. How can you support? What kind of transaction advisory support can you do? So that's how we got pulled in. And then now we're dealing with SIAC, International Airport Corporation. So we try to align well with what government's priorities are, both at the national and local level. So the national logistics strategy that one of our projects drafted for DTI was a direct response to DTI's request. Si Yusek Pacheco. If she were here today, probably she would have presented bits and pieces of the NLS. So, and then, it's not just we do it and then we give it to them. No, actually, we do quality control as well. Whenever we complete certain plans or certain efforts requested by government, we subject it to consultations, we show it to them, okay ba? Do you have comments, feedback, etc., etc. And to the extent possible, we try to co-create. Hindi yung tipong waiter lang sila, customer sila, waiter kami, and we just do, and then ito na yung finished product. No, we try to do it with them para may ownership talaga. Kasi in the first place, it's your request. Parang ganun. And I'm not aware of the Camarines Sur effort, but I think, if I may be candid, maybe sometimes the different government agencies, maybe through cabinet clusters, they should probably better coordinate as well. And how do they connect all of these different terminals? I don't think personally there's anything wrong with having different hubs. Kasi if there's one mega hub, you still need smaller hubs to serve that hub. So for example, you can connect BAC-TC in Benguet and Nueva Vizcaya to this emerging Clark Food Hub. Diba? Does it mean this will be the hub for everyone? No? Of course, you still need hub and spoke model. It's still going to be a hub and spoke model. Anyway, so presumably, Camarines Sur can connect also to, let's say, either Samar, kasi through Mantong, or through the Clark Food Hub. So, pwede. I don't see anything wrong with it. But I think maybe it would be good for the different government agencies to talk through and see how things can fall well together, fit well together.
Thank you, sir. Any other answers from our speakers? Okay. Moving forward with our next question. For Mr. Pamintuan and others who may also give their comment. Mr. Pamintuan's presentation on the timeless issue of the cost of food logistics is of primary interest to the cold chain industry, particularly the question of why food production planning does not provide for surpluses that could play an important role not only to counteract supply aberrations, but also to develop other potential markets. We submit that the cold chain is only one of the components of the total food value chain. Our role is to create a delicate balance between supply and demand. This phenomenon is usually a chicken and egg situation. So, the question is, what can the government and private sector do to, number one, lessen import dependence, and number two, enhance the competitive advantage of local produce?
If the government really wants us to produce surplus, then they should work towards that objective. But they are not. Diba? It's not. I'm not saying that they do not want us to stop the importation. Actually, ang feeling ko dito is they are in fact abetting it, even motivating it to come in through imports. Because if they really want to solve this problem, like I said, connecting the dots, the cold chain, the freight logistics companies like mine, the markets, the manufacturers, factories, etc., all you need to do is just link them all up together with a proper app. And then something can happen along the way. But so far, like I said earlier, the Department of Agriculture Secretary even had another executive order that minimizes the contradictions and allowing more imports to come in, liberalizing the importation of many produce. So, what does that tell us? I do not want to say that the DA is pushing the imports through our mouths, but it seems to be so. Diba? It begets the question of, bakit nga ba? Why don't we just push our farmers to produce the right surpluses so that eventually we end up buying less and less and less. In fact, there is no timetable that the DA has set up to say, in 2-3 years' time, we will stop the importation already because we will have produced so much. Wala naman ganun eh. So what does that tell us? That it tells us that it might be on a very prolonged time and period, and we will still be importing a lot. Or whichever comes first. Naubos na yung dollars ng mga OFWs natin and we don't have money to buy for imports anymore, then it will stop. But right now, nobody's telling us categorically that in 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, the imports are going to be progressively lessened on an annual basis until such time that it will reach the minimum. Diba?
Thank you so much for the answers, sir. Anybody who would like to give their answers also regarding that question?
I think the key word is being serious. The government should be very serious in whatever projects they are trying to implement. Particularly the Department of Agriculture or the agriculture sector. Because at the end of the day, all of us knows that the culprit of all of this is the corruption. And no nobody among us, even in this room, cannot even make a stand to fight the corruption. Everybody is suffering because of the corruption. In fact, this coming September 10 to 13, I'll be attending a public forum in Geneva hosted by WTO. And one of my agenda actually as my position paper will be corruption. Because I've been listening even to the farmers' sentiments. They were provided with seeds by the government. They were provided by this solar irrigation, but they cannot use it. Why? Because it's still not complete. They need a drip irrigation and etc. So again, it will never be successful, and our agriculture industry will remain to be failure. And talking about importation, corruption still involved there. Why? Because there's a huge money in importation. For example, the sugar alone or the rice alone. Do you know that there's 150 pesos per bag that's being collected? Just compute, how many times they are trying to import every year. That's exactly the equivalent amount of what being corrupted. So again, I know this is a sensitive issue, but let's face, reality here. We'll never, be a progressive country. It will remain to be silent, it will remain to be meek, and it will remain to be a witness, to what's going on in our country. Thank you.
May I add? I'm involved in shipping. We have a lot of imports and we have a lot of exports. And these are passing through our hands. We are the ones who, being international forwarders, we manifest this and we cover it with documentation. Do you know that most of the foreign companies that are handling our import cargo, do you know that they are now charging us positioning fee, container positioning fee. The container positioning fee can be from a minimum of $500 to $1,000 per container. Why is that? Because the containers end up in the Philippines and get stored here for a long time because there is hardly any export cargo to move out. We have not been developing our exports. So that means this will continue on and on and on and on. So all the imports that are coming in, they are already expensive. There's duties and taxes that we charge on them. And then there's the container positioning fee. And then there's the higher freight as well because of the fuel cost. You could just imagine, that is the reason why inflation is very high. We are paying so much for imports more than necessary. If we had if the import and the export volumes are 1:1, then there is no longer the freights will go down, and then there will be no more container positioning fees. But there is right now. So we are paying so much more, we just don't know it. Okay.
If I may add quickly, so I think on the issue of imports and local production, I think in the short run it's not mutually exclusive. Kasi we're not self-sufficient, to be honest. And there's growing pressure with the government. But you have to address inflation, and you have a lot more consumers than producers. So I think in the short run, I think you really need imports. But sayang in parallel sana, you're working on how do you boost local production so that you're not super dependent. As Rene mentioned, we are really dependent on imports. right now, we have no choice because we're not competitive. Even domestic production is not competitive with some imports. No? And I think the problem there is structural in nature. No? We have a lot of things that we need to change structurally. No? While we're importing in the short run, I think government and other stakeholders need to address certain structural defects like land retention limits. No? You want ag to be efficient and effective, you need to have scale. And right now, land is fragmented. No? So I think there have been calls to somehow try to revisit the CARP, no? Whether you can address certain defects because you force smallholder farms, and as we know, that's not efficient. No? You need scale for agriculture. Modernization, we've long been talking about it. Speaking of corruption, perhaps hindi nagawa properly yung modernization up to now. Your picture of the Carabao 50, 70 years ago, still the same mode. And then we're romanticizing small family-owned lands, no? But we have to be actively seeking more cooperatives, no? And consolidating cooperatives. Again, I think the key here is scale. You need to consolidate the actors, you need to aggregate things, and then supply it with different tools like cold storage. And then speaking of imports, maybe what you want to focus in terms of imports are the inputs, no? The fertilizers that will make production cheaper. So I think imports per se is not bad, especially in the short run, because we can't just cut it off, but you need a lot to work on a lot of structural defects, plus other things like corruption.
Our problem with imports is a self-inflicted wound. Why is that? Many years ago, during the pandemic, and the ravages of ASF. How did ASF come into the country? ASF is not a generic or endemic or native sickness. It entered through our ports. So we have a very poor quarantine service system. If you remember the Cocolisa, the ASF, the flu and the sicknesses of the beef and cow, mad cow disease. All of this did not come from the country. They were coming from outside. So it is self-inflicted because we allow these things to come into our country, affect the entire animal industries that we have. I still remember Secretary Villandar was calling me up and says, Rene, we need the pork and the beef from Mindanao. I said, why? Because we are culling all the Central Luzon pigs by the hundreds of thousands. They had to cull because the ASF was already ravaging the whole area, and the pigs will die anyway. So they were already culling them. And I said, I'll give you a system by which we can transport the pork already chopped, already fixed, in refrigerated containers, in carton boxes, just like the imports. They did not allow me to do it. We could have brought it from Mindanao in such a system. Sadly, they did not allow it. They still carried the animals live through the ships and through the trucks. I said, you are yourself not following your own quarantine protocols. Diba? When you transport live, that means you either transfer the sicknesses all over the land, or if they are not yet sick, they will get sick along the way, right? So it's really very sad, no? I'm so sad that we don't even know what our quarantine protocols are. Tapos, eventually I realized in the local palengkes here in Metro Manila,
they were selling the imported carton boxes that had come in as imports. Whereas, we could have done it from Mindanao and elevated sana the level of food safety and HACCP. We could have elevated it already, and we should be selling them.
The quarantine protocol is not consistent with the local government unit protocol. Kaya yung zoning, the 7-kilometer radius, na pag 7-kilometer radius ka, hindi ka na pwedeng gumalaw, ikakalmo siya. 10, you can galaw within the area. So, we did a lot of reformulation. May mga brands kami na nag-shift kami from pork to chicken. We reformulated para hindi sir kami tamahan kasi we know the sickness of the government. Nagpa-approve ako na nagpa-approve ng mga requirements. These are my parameters. These are my phytosanitary. These are the compliance criteria. They say no because it came from this and that. So, yeah, respect natin. So, napilitan mag-import yung ibang players. And one of the intervention that we propose to quarantine office is the private-public audit. Diba may mga nag-PPA, public-private audit, end-to-end traceability ng mga product. So, say for instance, if your pork item is coming from ASF-free country, kailangan i-present mo yung mga objective evidence. So, review of the origin, from the origin down to the plate, ipipresent mo siya. Because unfortunately, there is no cure, parang COVID eh. There is no cure to ASF as of now. And my outlook is that, for the farmers, sa second thought ka na mag-alaga because walang available vaccine for ASF. And it is a 10-year to 20-year problem. Kumbaga kung may pili ka ngayon, hindi mo ma-assure na hindi mamamatay kasi non-existence ang cure. Wala pa. And the behavior of the disease is that pwede siyang sumabit sa truck mo, sa conveyor mo. Pag naiwan doon, ang bilis ng the infection will grow exponentially tenfold. So, ganun siya. So, yes sir, walang DA eh. Paano natin mag-solve to, sir?
Do you know the level of imports that we have now? According to the statistics that I saw, if the cold storage have 1,000 metric tons in the system, the amount, that is the domestic. The level of importation would be in the 10 to 15,000 metric tons. That is how big the scale of imbalance. So, hindi na ba tayo kakain? Siyempre, kakain pa rin tayo. So, we will still need to import and import. You know, the only problem I have in this system is that nobody's telling us what is the way to go through this problem and how many years will it take us to make bawi, di ba? Wala. And if there's no vaccine that has been developed yet, so like me, I'm a farmer also in Mindanao. And I have 3 female pigs, no? And they all had a very good panganganak. So, one had 10, the other had 8, the other one had 11. Namatay lahat yun. So if I were a farmer, and everybody's talking about this there, they would say, wag ka na munang mag-alaga. Maybe, I don't know, 5, 10 years, we don't even know. We don't even know. So, if the farmers are not growing pigs, even backyard style, where are we going to get our pigs? Where are we going to get our pork? we will still continue to be importing. That is also the reason why I'm pushing for the food terminal. Okay? Because that's the only way you can control this. You will have a managed area with high biosecurity, and then you can control it. But without that, how can you control it? Wala. That's why the food terminal is really a strategic necessity for us. Without even the statistics, I think the statistics are mostly guesstimates because there is no basis to get the information from. But if you have a food terminal, you have incoming and outgoing, you can see the numbers. But right now, wala naman. It's all guesstimates.
Okay.
I would like to, very quick, I know, I would like to justify the importation. The reason why we need also to import, okay, specifically the onion. So, we know that most of the crops are seasonal. So there's a certain, months you can only plant a certain crops. So onion, you have to start planting November and start harvesting February until May, June. So by the time, there's no available harvest anymore. Okay, I agree with what Jay mentioned, that structuring is very important. So, one thing that we can resolve this is because they have ready land to be developed. And they can even offer it for 50 years. You can utilize the land for 50 years, as big as, you need. So, that's one reason why, we were forced to import onion because, there's no proper structuring of, let's say, program it well. And, practically that will solve, our food security problem.
Multinationals, Dole and Del Monte, are planting huge tracts of lands in southern Mindanao and northern and middle and central and northern Mindanao. And they continue to export. That's why I was saying earlier, best practices lang ito eh. We're not following best practices, we're not copying, and consequently, we're at a loss. We don't even know what to do. And yet, all we need to do is just copy the best practices of those multinationals. If they can do it, we should be able to do it as well. How do we do that? So many retired employees of those companies are available. You just get to hire them, bring them over to different regions of the country, and they can start off the food terminal system. Packing houses, slaughterhouses, etc., etc. But we're not doing it. So if we're not going to do it, that's why I was posing the challenge in my talk to the Cold Chain Association of the Philippines. I was saying, private sector, would you like to do it? Because the government is not yet doing it. Probably, this is like, when you tie the carabao, diba? You put a ring on the nose, and then you put a rope there, and then you pull the carabao, and it will follow you. It's just like that, no? If the government is not following, maybe the private sector should be the one to do it, and then they will see the lights. I hope so. I don't know.
Okay, thank you so much for that very substantial discussion. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists here in front. Thank you so much for the enlightenment, and thank you so much for the substance that we have heard this afternoon. Maraming salamat po. And of course, thank you po, yes. Maraming salamat po. We have heard both sides, so we have appreciated also both sides. Maraming salamat.